on your end, and I think we're good. Starting recording. Okay. Okay, great. So, you were okay. It's recording now. Great. So this is Lucy from
I,
from Blue
I see
Moon Red
lost
Horn.
ticks on your background. Are
I'm
you a
sorry.
teacher or a writer or something?
Okay, a good question about me. Yes, I'm a teacher. I work at a local school district. I'm basically a special ed teacher, kind of a power professional. I have a degree in secondary school social studies. I love history. Like one of my passions is history and geopolitics, and I follow like the Ukraine war. Try to follow that stuff pretty closely. So I really love history. I work with developmentally disabled kids though right now. I'm not a social studies teacher, but I was at different times. I'm a socialist. I've been in several socialist organizations over the years. I'm in a small group right now, Australia-based group, Red Fire Online, but I'm not super active. I was in Socialist Alternative. They're the group that has Kashama Sawant. I was a member of that group for 10 years. I'm not now. I left in 2018 because of their support for Bernie Sanders. And I felt, I understand a lot of people like Bernie, and
I just found out about this small channel. I like some of the small channels. People talk about things that people don't talk about on the bigger channels. Um, and I've basically been putting off talking to her because I just had a lot of work and I haven't been able to do it. But now I have time. Hello?
Hi, I'm here. I'm here now.
All
Now, I
right.
don't know why that's happening. It's on my end. I have Spectrum, and they really suck. I have Spectrum internet connection. They really suck. They do this sometimes. I have a strong connection. I hope it doesn't happen again. If it does, maybe we can reschedule, but let's keep our fingers crossed. So, let me go ahead and make sure it's recording. It's
Yeah,
still
rural
recording.
area broadband, it's a problem, right?
Yeah, broadband. Yeah, that's why we need a better Wi-Fi system in this country. So yeah, I can edit this. I can take out the dead. I got a lot of stuff recorded, so I can take out the dead spaces here. So great. Yeah, I'm a socialist. I've been in several socialist organizations over the years. So I think one of the big problems is people like AOC. I mean, they're like a synthetic left, a phony constructed left, and they're inhibiting the development of a real left. They're blocking actually or development. Like they're pro-imperialists. They support the war in Ukraine. AOC, as everybody knows, is basically fronting. She is very much fronting for the Democratic Party, and people know it due to work of you and Jimmy Dore and so many other people. She's been exposed. People see her for what she is. And not just AOC, it's the squad, and Bernie was part of that. Like, I understand the enthusiasm a lot of people had for Bernie Sanders. I'm from Vermont. I've actually met him a few times, which in Vermont it's not hard to do. It's like a small state, about 500,000 people, and it's like Vermont is like one giant extended family. Everybody knows everybody else. So I met him, and years ago at high school, I really liked him. He was like a hero to me when I remember he was mayor of Burlington. He was a socialist mayor of Burlington. But then he's extremely weak, and he's just feeding people back into the Democratic Party on so many levels. And 2016, 2020, his campaigns were totally disastrous. My good friend Joe Biden, he could have aggressively fought Hillary Clinton and called her out for so many things, but he just folded. And they blatantly cheated him. The whole scandal in 2016 was how corrupt the Democratic Party was, and he just completely folded. He betrayed his supporters, and the same thing same thing in 2020. He betrayed his supporters, and so we have to break from the Democratic Party and build something else. How to do it, I don't know. It's a $6 million question. But the Democratic Party is not our friend. They're designed to keep people passive, to stabilize people, to keep people in their corral. And I think we need to break out of it. And so what you were doing or other people doing here is really amazing. I think it's really exemplary. You felt, I think you said you were a bit frustrated that other people aren't doing what you're doing. More people are now, but more people
Well, I
should be.
think there's a lot of smearing that goes on online, and basically the way it works, it's like if you don't agree on basically every little thing with this other person, you can't join with them for
Yeah,
kind of a larger goal. And I think that's really toxic. Like, I feel like you don't have to be a libertarian, to, for example, join with libertarians in protesting the war. You don't
Sure.
have to be a member of the LaRouche movement, which, by the way, is not a party. Initially, I thought it was a party, but it turns out it's not, and they're not trying to be a party. But you don't have to be a member of them to join with them in order to, speak out at a town hall. You don't have to be a member of the Green Party. I have some criticisms of the Green Party. I don't like this guy Howie Hawkins.
I don't like him either. Yeah, I agree. I agree. I agree. Yeah.
So you don't have to like him, or you don't have to like everything about them in order to join with them. So because I had that attitude, basically, I tried to. Basically, what I ended up doing is, like, Jose was kind of, because he's been doing, like, heckling for like 3 or 4 years, and then I was like, Jose, you're basically you're great, and you have a very powerful voice, but we need more people doing this. It's not just about the same person doing this, the same people. So I tried to basically recruit, I guess, like, and I didn't recruit that many people to do it. It was just like only 2 or 3 other people. But then people started noticing, like, oh, it's not just the LaRouche people. Other people are joining. Other people are doing this. Unaffiliated, Green Party, former Democrats, people that formerly voted for her. And then we did kind of like an anti-recruitment event at the military, at a military recruitment event in the Bronx that she did.
Right.
And that was another group. It was like another group, small group called Bronx Anti-War Coalition.
Okay.
And then they talk to other people that they know. So not everybody feels really like empowered to go and scream at a town hall. I don't even know how I got to that point. But people will show up, and watch and listen, and then they might not say anything. Well, I didn't say anything the first event either. Like, they might not speak out the first or second event, but once they go to 1 or 2 events and they see it happen, they gain confidence.
Right.
I don't know if that makes sense. So, like, you don't have to go and speak out at an event right away. You can just, like, go and watch, and it's actually also very needed to have people there with cameras, just like with phone cameras, because otherwise there's nobody there to capture it.
Right. So,
and
right.
Also at the town halls, it's a lot of older people, older people that they're just kind of like want to retire, and they don't have the energy anymore for this kind of thing. But older people are being affected by this too. They're trying to raise the retirement age. They're trying to cut Medicaid. They're trying to cut Medicare, basically, by through this Medicare Advantage stuff. So there's a lot of stuff that you could go to your town hall to talk to people about, that people might be interested in hearing.
Right. And even if someone doesn't feel confident speaking up, they can play other roles. They can you said videotape someone. Make a video or
you
support.
definitely need people doing the video, and then it is intimidating. Like, I actually used to be a very shy person, but I feel like when I speak up when it's necessary. I don't know if that makes sense.
Sure.
Yeah, it's definitely not the event itself. It wasn't like, I actually feel like it wasn't the best time to do an intervention in Spanish, because our district is like a lot of different groups of people. We got all kinds of people, all immigrants from all over the world. But that area was actually more African American than Hispanic in Co-op City. It's not like that. The district is majority Hispanic, but that area was not. So it was like minority, but there were people there that, they speak mostly Spanish. Okay. And I knew that if it was on video, it would be shared more in our area. Right. So that's why I did it that way. But then the other reason that I did it that way is because I feel like I feel like Hispanic people, not everybody, it's not a monolith or anything, but there have been multiple countries in Latin America where there's already a third party. You know,
Right.
people aren't even talking about it as if it's like something impossible or anything. And Americans kind of still think it's impossible, whereas if you talk to, you know, Mexicans in the area, they're like, oh yeah, you know, AMLA party, third party,
Yeah.
that's it. Let's just
Right.
do it.
Right.
So I feel like that kind of confidence is just not present with Americans.
Hmm.
With like you know, not even all Americans, you know, just like multi-generational Americans, they're very attached to the Democratic Party still more than we are.
Right.
So I felt like, you know, there's different third parties in Latin America, and not everybody is on board with all of them. Some third parties aren't even complete opposition; they're kind of like controlled opposition as well.
Sure.
But still, it's a third party, and it's a start.
Right. Right.
And I feel like people in our area, they understand that very well because there's people from Mexico, there's people from Colombia, Chile, there's, you know, people from African countries. I talked to this guy from Namibia, and he was like, yeah, let's do the third party. What, you know, in other countries, people know third party, what it is, like, you know, that you have to break at some point. So I felt like I feel like Americans, like the multi-generational ones, including Puerto Ricans, by the way, which, you know, like is the bloc that AOC represents, they're
Mhm.
still very tied to the Democrats, and I felt like we have something else to offer, and that's why I did it that way.
Okay. Yeah, it's very interesting. Yeah, I think leftists in the U.S. can draw on the experiences of immigrants, particularly from the global South, from Africa, from Latin America, who have a more recent history of class struggle. People here just use the Democrats are the only game in town. That's
Yeah.
interesting. Now, at these events, how did you find the audience to be? Were some people supportive or hostile or just totally surprised? How was the crowd?
I think a lot of them were just like kind of tired. They're just like, let her speak. By the way, she had been speaking for an hour before
Yeah,
before we spoke. Like I was the last question or something like that.
yeah,
Um, a
right.
lot of them don't really care. They are a lot of them are just there to ask local questions. A lot of older people, maybe about like their social security benefits or something. You know, a lot of people are not really interested in breaking out into a third party. But
Right.
if I speak to people individually, like I think if I was part of the crowd, you know, when people see it on video, they're like, you know, who are all these sheep, you know? But I think what happens basically is if you're in a crowd and someone does something that's disruptive, it just seems really crazy. Like, you know, from the
Yeah.
um, watching it from the other side, and I think they just don't understand what's going on. And I think, to be honest, if I was part of the crowd, I wouldn't really get it immediately either because it's just kind of very shocking. It's like someone interrupting an event. You know, it's kind of shocking. So
Yeah.
I think you gotta give people a little bit of time. Like, sometimes like their reaction is like they laugh or they're like, what, you know, what's going on? Like, what are you
Yeah.
doing?
Who is this crazy person?
Yeah, it's just kind of a disruption and kind of a like, you know, the Democrats have really made their meetings into kind of business events, and they bring a PowerPoint, and it's
Yeah.
not a two-way conversation, and people are kind of just used to sitting there and listening and like seeing
Passively,
if
yeah.
they can squeeze some crumbs out. That's how, you know, there's not like a protest movement at the Democrats.
Yeah.
So I think it kind of takes some time for people to flip the switch in their heads and realize that they don't have to be kind of like the passive recipients of propaganda and just like sit there and like take in the PowerPoint.
Mm.
You, you know, so I think that takes a little bit of time, and we need more people to go to these events
Okay. Right.
in order to break that, because when it's just a few people, it's good for social media, but you need social media to feed back into the loop and get more people going to the local events, because that's what will get, especially a lot of these older Democrats,
Mhm.
in our area to wake up a little, as well as, like, I think Maine is more independence, right? But if you live in an independent state or a Republican state, depending on what your state is like, you can go protest the Republicans. People are like, why are you spending your time heckling AOC? I'm like, first of all, she's my congressperson,
Yeah, yeah,
right? Second of all, she's like, who else am I supposed to? We also did other things, like we went to protest Joe Biden. It's just that wasn't caught on camera, so
okay.
it's like, it's not like I have a particular interest in heckling what they call the most progressive congressperson. It's just that I genuinely believe that she's not progressive,
It's
or
not
if she
progressive
is,
at
I
all.
don't
Yeah,
really care about that label anymore.
yeah, yeah. Interesting.
Um, and Joe Biden is not as accessible to me, right? So
Right, right.
that,
Yeah, I heckled Joe Biden myself back in 2016 when he was just kicking off his campaign. It was in Manchester, New Hampshire. It was a big crowd. He was trying to show how close to labor he was, and me and a friend heckling like, why did you support the 1996 crime bill? He noticed me too. I mean, he just looked sideways. He was a little nervous. I mean, now it's harder to do that now, but my claim, it was such, I don't know how productive it was, but it was a huge amount of fun. It was a rush. I heckled Joe Biden. But anyway, what I liked seeing like Jose Varga at times and other hecklers, like they had a sense of urgency to it. Like they called out to AOC, why are you supporting Nazis in Ukraine? Why are you getting us to the brink of nuclear war? And like, yeah, he was very angry. He was polite and firm, but angry too. Like you're getting us to the brink of a nuclear war. How's that going to help children or elderly people in a nuclear war? And really, there was I think it was with Jose Varga. I think heckled has been with Chuck Schumer and someone else. I forget who. Another congressman from New York, and I forget who. It was an upper middle class, like bourgeois crowd there, and it was really interesting. Jose and someone else were really heckling Chuck Schumer, like, why are you supporting Nazis in Ukraine? And they didn't expect it at all. And what the good, the powerful, any of the crowd there was there was like nervous laughter. Like, people are not, I was going to say, yeah, people are not conditioned to criticize their politicians. Like, U.S. politics is basically
it's
like,
conditioning, yeah, and people laugh, or like, because it's shocking in the moment. It's like,
yeah, yeah. Like there are these like politics in U.S. is like personality cults. They make and break these creepy personality cults. Like, okay, you're on the left, you support Bernie, you support AOC. You're on the right, you support Trump or these other people, and you're not really allowed to criticize them. It's like you're not, and people are not used to it. Like, I'm from Vermont. I spent most of my life in Vermont. I live in Maine now, and a couple of years ago, I tell people I'm from Vermont. I work in my coworkers are fairly liberal, so I said I'm from Vermont. Somebody's eyes would light up and say, "Oh, Vermont, Bernie Sanders." People's eyes would light up, and you must really, Bernie Sanders is really wonderful. Well, I try to, I wouldn't argue with them. I said, yeah, but I don't know if running in the Democratic Party is such a good idea. And yeah, people say, yeah, I never thought of that before.
well, yeah, like, I think there's people that think like that about AOC. They're like, you're lucky we have a Republican congressperson that's against abortion or something like this in our district. First of all, like, the assumption that abortion is the number one issue in our area
Well,
it could just not be more far off. Like,
okay, but it's
you
a
know,
Hispanic Catholic area.
I mean, I don't think it's not really, like, I wouldn't even say there isn't a single religion
Okay,
that's a majority or anything like that. There's all kinds of, there's like, the Bronx used to be very Jewish. There's also a lot of there's a lot of black people, so African Americans. I guess there are like a lot of Baptists, or those kinds of denominations, and there's also the evangelical churches.
Okay.
There's also lots of Muslims. So
Okay.
it's really all over the place. There's Catholics too. There's like the Irish Catholic immigrants and stuff that came to New York City, and they're still here. So it's really all kinds of people. But I wouldn't say that they're, you know, but there are religious people. It's not
Mm.
like I wouldn't say it's people think of New York as some kind of like center of atheism or something like this because we have the entertainment industry here, but there's also religious people. There's like people that are not that socially liberal. They just vote Democrat because it's kind of a Democrat enclave. The Bronx is probably the bluest part of the nation, but
Right.
that doesn't mean they're socially liberal in the way that somebody in the South might think like.
Okay.
Oh, you're lucky to have AOC because she supports LGBTQ and abortion. Like, that's not why people are voting for AOC here.
Okay.
She's just kind of seen more as part of our community, Puerto Rican, like one of us. I would not by any means say that this is the number one concern for everybody. Maybe for some people, but
Okay.
not for everyone. So
Okay.
if she actually eases up on some of the positions that she ran on, like anti-war, no military police in schools,
Right.
that kind of thing, she's gonna lose a lot of support here. That's not. It's New York City is not as socially liberal as people think,
Okay.
and it's not really. I don't think the pro-war liberal kind of platform sells here anywhere any better than it does in the rest of the country. I really don't.
Okay. So there
Yeah,
is a feeling for an anti-war movement. There could be support for it.
I think there is even more of a feeling because if, like this area, it's like over 40% foreign born, lots of
Okay.
immigrants.
Right.
Um, Not all of them are like anti-imperialist or anything. Some of them, they just want to be in America and
Right. Right.
they chose to come here. But I would still say if you're gonna have like a part of the country that's open to a third party, it would definitely be here too. It's not just in places in states that are independent.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Now, at one event, I think you heckled AOC, and then you left the building and you were signing up people for a third party. I think if I remember, was that the People's Party?
No. So
Okay.
I've never been a member of the People's Party.
Okay.
Sadly, the only party I've been a member of is the Democratic Party. I wouldn't say I was a party member, but I
Okay.
voted Democrat at one
Yeah.
point when I
Yeah.
was younger.
Right. Yeah. I used to be that
um,
way. Yeah.
but I actually haven't joined any party because I what I'm trying to do is I have a friend, Roger Meadows, and his idea is to have uh, like an abolish party platform, which is basically a third party coalition.
Okay.
It's not a party, it's a third party coalition because the third parties are basically powerless because everyone needs to agree on everything before they move forward, and it's just never going to work unless you have a coalition. So
Okay.
I've been basically sticking to the idea of working with different people under a coalition. Um, but out of all of the different people I've met, I've noticed every party has its pros and cons, like every group.
Mhm.
Um, I I think we need a coalition. I don't think we need to be married to a specific third party at this point.
Right.
I don't think it's working.
Right. Yeah, sure. There'd be like a united front or united front from below. Like people come from different backgrounds, different philosophy, but they can work together on some key issues. Not give up their political independence, but like work, like if you agree with this cause, healthcare for all, work with other people, and so on. Not that you give up your independence or you support
Right.
everything other people do. It's like unite for like the saying was it march separately, strike together, something like that. That's some slogan like
Something
that.
like this, because I've just realized it's impossible to get people to agree with anything. With everything. I'm tired of trying, and it's. I think the idea of having a third-party coalition and uniting under perhaps one thing, which would be to make New York State into a ballot initiative state, so that people can get their own initiatives on the ballot.
Right,
Um, and without having to go through politicians. I think that would be like a uniting thing, and then people can vote on it, right?
right,
So I think it has to be something like that, something that's not too ideological, something
okay,
that's not too. But I do also think that um, uh, the idea of like bringing different ethnic groups and talking in people's language and stuff is really necessary. Like there were people that were like, "Why are you talking about immigration law?" Um, not everybody in the country agrees with this immigration stuff. I'm like, yeah, but a lot of people in my area do. So it's the stuff that like applies to specific groups or ethnicities or whatever, you can talk about those things locally. But as
right,
a united coalition, I feel like it has to be something that's very non-ideological or focused on any specific group, and it has to be something like third-party coalition. We're trying to, where the only goal is to maybe like reform our elections, like paper ballots and get
right.
and allow people the power to get their own ballot initiatives in New York State. It has to be something that's like talks about the system and not about the specifics.
Right, yeah,
You know?
right. Yeah, good point, interesting point there. I see a lot of the role of electoral politics, not so much to change the system, but to educate people. Like you get people, like a campaign can educate people, and if you get someone elected, you can use that like as you have free publicity for your cause. I don't think like a progressive
Right.
congressperson by themselves will be able to really do very much, but they can. It's very powerful to educate people. Campaigns that educate people what's really going on, some of the corruption, some of the stuff going on, what's really happening in Ukraine, which the media isn't really talking about. So it's a way to break through this. What did you think about I wasn't there, but February 19th, there was an anti-war rally in D.C., and there were coalition, there were libertarians there, there were leftists there, there were people from the LaRouche organization. I supported it, but it was very controversial on the left. A lot of people really opposed it. What would be your take on something like that?
I thought it was fine, honestly. Like I from the first from the first day, I've been on board with this idea of not joining any of the. I wouldn't say not joining any of the parties in action, but like not attaching your name to any of the parties,
Right,
right? Which I think is like important because then people will be like, oh, she's not libertarian, but she's joining with the libertarians, or they're not Marxists, but they're doing something in common with the Marxists, right? I think
yeah,
that kind of unity is important. Um, so I think it's good to have like at least a few unaffiliated people, which I like. I'm sticking to that for now.
okay, okay,
um, to just join with people on the issues that you agree on. There was a lot of smearing, like anti-war event is so white, etc. Well, there's a number of reasons for that. One of them is that a lot of minorities are really scared to go to protests. I think like that
yeah,
is
sure.
uh,
Immigration status, sure, that's understandable.
right. One of the reasons, like, I've asked people to show up to things locally and they don't even want to go to a town hall. Like, they're scared, immigration status, this, that.
Right,
I don't think a lot of the reasons that people gave for people not attending were necessarily, like, applicable for everything. A lot
sure,
of people don't have the money or the resources to go to DC for an event.
right,
If you want to do that, um, you actually have to put money into busing people into events, and if that money isn't available, you're going to have a crowd that's more middle class, more overwhelmingly white, etc. Right? Um,
Right.
I think it is true that they probably could have talked to more of the local DC movements, but a lot of local people in DC also don't want to show up to an anti-war protest. Maybe that's not their number one issue. Maybe they're more concerned with local things that affect them locally.
Right.
So and they don't want to like add something else to their stresses.
Right.
So
Right.
I don't really think that was a problem. As far as people saying that there was like far right people there, I didn't really see that many far right people there. I really didn't. Like I saw a bunch of hippies, really, like a lot
Okay.
of hippies.
Yeah.
There were a lot of libertarians, and I'm from New York. I didn't really know that many libertarians, to be honest, in my area. But like the more of them I meet, the more I realize I don't have as many ideological differences with them as I thought.
Yeah.
Um, uh, Ron Paul was there. He was saying stuff like "end the Fed." I think libertarians have they do have some interesting ideas about decentralized banking and stuff that are very
Yeah.
relevant to us, like credit unions, how we can decentralize the banking system in order to have more money, and more buying power. I don't agree with everything libertarians say. Like, I think they really missed the mark on a lot of global banking stuff, stuff related to the World Bank, the debt relief, stuff like this. But I do think they have some interesting ideas.
Yeah.
So, and if they want to go to an event for ending, the war, I think, I don't see anything wrong with that, really. Like the U.S. is a different kind of country than other countries. They're not. This isn't a country where people have really experienced, yes, like there are failures under capitalism here, but you haven't really seen the banking system bottom out since the 1920s because they always are able to raise the debt ceiling, right? So
Right.
I don't think most Americans are anti-capitalist in the way people in other countries are sometimes, and I
Right.
think as long as that's the case, there's going to be a lot of libertarians, people that kind of like agree with capitalism, the banking system, but just want to make a few changes around it. So
Right.
I don't think that that's really gonna change um, until there's like a drastic change in our economy. I don't think it's a question of like getting people to be more racially open or something like that. I don't think libertarians are necessarily racist. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, sure, sure, sure. Yeah, I think some of the stuff going on with the banking industry is a bit scary. There's some alternate media. People think it may be the deliberate controlled demolition of a lot of smaller banks. They're centralizing to a few big banks, and there's talk about this central bank digital currency. People on the left think this is a crazy conspiracy theory, but people on the right are more, yeah, probably something in central bank digital currency will give the state a great deal of control over people. Like, oh, you went to that protest? Well,
Well, I agree with them on a lot of that, honestly. Like
yeah,
and digital currency, like people aren't thinking about it at all in this way, but there's a lot of people that don't have W-2 jobs, right? They're in the cash economy.
right, right,
And digital currency is going to make everything taxable. So
yeah,
I think people really underestimate how much that's going to affect working people. Once
mhm,
everything is taxable, it's really going to be a big hit to poor people, to immigrants, to
right,
all of these anybody that works in the cash economy. It's going to
right.
be really, really tough
It's going to hurt the most
to
vulnerable
switch
people.
to
Yeah,
digital currency. So I definitely agree with libertarians on that. And I don't know. I think we should be sounding the alarm like that more because that's going to be like probably a 20% reduction in a lot of people's incomes if every dollar they earn in cash is completely taxable. And
yeah,
it's not just going to affect the rich; it's really, really going to affect the poor. So I think you know we're underestimating like the problematics
Yeah.
of this current situation.
Right, right. There's talk, we're entering a new global era, multipolar world, but maybe the ruling class of the U.S. is planning some type of controlled demolition. Some of this is scary. Yeah, a lot of people are saying that, everything is like if you work with libertarians or you work with conservatives, you're platforming fascists. I think that's way too overdone. Like, I don't like Tucker Carlson. A lot of things he says I really, really don't like. But it's okay to go on Tucker Carlson. He has a huge audience. He has an enormous audience. And you want to connect to people. Ultimately, you have to talk to people, get beyond like purity politics and communicate with people. It's one thing that the left kind of gets wrong. There's a lot of sectarianism, a lot of purity politics. Like people hate Glenn Greenwald because he was on Tucker Carlson a couple times, which is, I think Glenn Greenwald is one of our most perceptive journalists. I don't agree with everything he says, but he does have a lot of insight.
I mean, I agree with you. Like, I think, there is a lot of like, I never see this on the local level. I feel like if you go to an event or you organize with people, you can disagree on something and still be friends with them. The
Yeah.
issue is social media. On
Social
social
media.
media, you don't really give a shit because it's like somebody you don't know on the other side of whatever wherever they live, and people really like allow so I just block people because, this person isn't a person that's going to meet me in real life, so I don't really care if they're going to if it's somebody that's going to help me in like real life do something, we're going to do something together. It's different because you care more about what they think because there's someone that you're going to see the next day. So I think a lot of this is like social media, like online interstate organizing. In reality, like that's why I think we should do more of these local kind of heckling groups. Really, like locally, we've been talking to Green Party, Independents, LaRouche, Libertarians, Democrats, Republicans, and somehow we're able to get enough consensus to go to an event and like do something.
Right.
And that only happens in real life. It doesn't happen online because when you're on Twitter, you'll bitch about every single like ideological disagreement and it's just never going to end. So
yeah. Well, interesting. Yeah, I think what bugged me is that what you were doing more social. You were doing what, like I was in Socialist Alternative for 10 years, and I know they have a branch in New York. Other socialist organizations have branches, the PSL, Workers' World, IMT, IG, you name it. They're in New York, and they should have been doing what you were doing, and they weren't. I mean, they were at the anti-recruitment rally. There was, I think, the Workers' World Party was there, and Danny Shaw from the PSL was there, and that was good. That was really good. But for the most part, the socialist groups I'm familiar with were not doing this, and they should have been out there doing what you're doing. I know that's kind of irritated me.
That's why I like noticed what LaRouche was doing, and I was like, "This is it. This is the way." They have a system for protesting that works, right? That doesn't mean you have to agree with everything, but they have a system that is working. So that's why I just joined this system. I didn't join everything. I just joined the system.
Okay.
And I think the issue with like the socialist groups in New York, I'm actually not sure if Socialist Alternative has a branch in the Bronx, right? So
I don't think they do. Yeah.
They'll say like, "Oh, it's in New York, but it's downtown," or I don't know where they hold their meetings. It's so far for so many of us. So, I did meet this guy that was in this Socialist Alternative group, but I'm actually also on the fence about that because I have disagreements with them. Like I noticed that like Shama Sawant retweeted some anti-China stuff, and it like made me concerned.
Yeah.
When I looked at the Workers
World.
Workers Strike Back platform,
Oh, yeah.
her 5 points are actually very similar to AOC's platform. When she started in the Bronx, it's like very focused on domestic politics and green jobs. Right. And I really feel like we have to shift the focus to international and to make people realize that, like she's really gone off kilter with this focus on getting electric stoves. like, we need to end the war.
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it'll, spend less energy on bombing the hell out of people. And when it comes to green jobs, um, it's not just about what you're currently spending on energy. It's the entire life cycle of whatever you're producing, right?
Mm,
So if you're spending less energy on the gas stove, but you're spending more energy on creating a new electric stove, you're still doing a shit ton of damage to the environment. So a lot of it is more about like rehashing what we have, even if it's not the cleanest thing, and cutting down on emissions where it really makes a difference, which is like not bombing half the world. Like this
yeah,
is what's
yeah,
causing a lot of environmental devastation. The other
yeah.
stuff, it's like we could tinker a little bit more around the edges, but there's going to be some environmental waste anyway. We just kind of have to control it. But the biggest emissions is the military.
Right,
And
right.
I don't understand this. Like, we're just in denial with this whole, AOC Workers Strike Back platform. They're doing the same thing with the Green New Deal ideas. I'm not really completely on board, to be
Okay, yeah,
honest.
makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, a lot of renewables are actually like solar. They're ecologically destructive to make solar
To
panels
make it,
and,
yes,
and
exactly.
wind, and they're not going to take up the slack. I don't know what the answer is, but they're not going to. We can't get off. Climate change is real, absolutely, but we can't get off fossil fuels right away either. Like I'm pro-nuclear. I didn't used to be. I used to hate nuclear energy, but I think we need it. I'm
Yeah, we
pro-nuclear.
need it.
We need. I don't see any alternative. But the renewables right now are not really renewable. They're ecologically destructive, and they don't really fit. If they won't fit the gap. They won't. But yeah, with the Workers Strike Back socialist alternative, I was in it for 10 years. Half the time I was very active, other half I was kind of an at-large member. And what they were doing kind of is tailing the Democrats. And they were trying to appealing to people in the Democratic Party. They were actually campaigned for Bernie Sanders. They were ambiguous about it in 2016, but they were totally open about it in 2020. And they did stuff like in New York, there's a story I heard. They sent the Sanders campaign, like they had these petitions for people to sign to asking Bernie Sanders to run for as an independent. And he's never going to do it, of course. But they had people sign up sheets to asking, petitioning the Sanders campaign that Bernie runs as independent. Thing is, these petitions never got to the Sanders campaign. They were contact sheets the organization was using to call up people and see if they could be prospective members. And people found out about it. They were so pissed off. There was one incident. They,
Right.
they, they did
Well,
so many.
the same thing is happening now, like with both RFK and Marianne Williamson, even though they're very different candidates. People
Yeah.
are like, oh, RFK is running as a Democrat, and they're just throwing support behind him again. It's like we have been here so many times. Granted,
Yeah.
I know that he's a Kennedy, and that they have a kind of specific history of confrontation with the Democratic Party, but there's a lot of stuff there that also doesn't add up. So forget the email lists and like the Green Party, people were already talking about, like, should we endorse RFK? Are you in a separate party, or are you not in a separate party? This
Yeah.
isn't. You have to grow some balls at some point. Just like go to the events and tell Marianne Williamson, tell RFK, no, we're not doing this again. We're not running as a Democratic Party again. Forget it. Like, and I feel like people don't, they just they don't think that they can, but you could do it. You could just go to those events and stand up and say, no, we're not going to do this again. It's over. We've tried this 2-3 times. It's over. We're not doing it.
Yeah, every couple of years they bring out like a shiny new toy, a shiny new thing. Okay, Bernie, he's people know what he's like, but now they have someone else. Every couple of years they do this. Do it RBN, the Revolutionary Blackout Network. They had a really interesting takedown of Marianne Williamson. They interviewed her and she left. They really gave it. They exposed her, and that was interesting to see. Yeah, Marianne Williamson, she's kind of a joke. I mean, I used to like her as a person. I don't even know if I like her as a person anymore. She's a fraud. RFK Jr. Well, Me, I would not vote for anyone in the Democratic Party, no matter who they are. RFK Jr. has done some interesting stuff to fight against narratives. I still won't vote for him or support him, but I'd like to see him give Biden a run for his money. I would not support him. I would not encourage anyone to vote for him, but I'd like to see him do well. That's kind of my feeling. But I would not support anyone in the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. We have to solidly break from it. A movement out of the Democrats. They're a disgusting party. They're part of the problem. They're holding back things.
It's just extending the pain because this party's already on life support.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Mexico is a really interesting case for people that don't know anything about Mexican politics. I feel like they should read about it because, they don't really have a two-party system the way that we do, but they had two very entrenched parties. Very entrenched parties.
Free for a while, which is like power for 70 years.
Yeah, exactly. And AMLO, the guy that's president today, he ran as part of one of the entrenched parties for 2 presidential rounds, which is very similar to Bernie Sanders. And then the third time he ran independent. Okay. But, obviously he's younger than Bernie, so he could do that. Like, he has the energy. Bernie's like on his last legs. He doesn't have the enthusiasm for anything anymore, obviously. But he's younger. I think he's still in his 60s. He did this third party, and people followed him, and they don't want to be part of the 2 entrenched parties anymore. That's it. The Mexicans are done with it. So I think, I think it's a big mistake to underestimate that and underestimate the fact that Mexicans are the biggest Hispanic group in the United States, and they have very recent experience with running a third-party candidate on the third run. It's literally a reflection of what could happen here, and people don't want to look south because they don't think they can learn anything from Mexico, because we have this kind of arrogance as Americans. But we really should be talking more about what happened in Mexico and seeing if we can. I would say especially in areas like mine, just talk to the Mexican Americans and see if we can get it started. Just start the third party. That's it, and break away from this Bernie Sanders shit. It's just not gonna work.
Right. Bernie's never gonna run as an independent. It's just not how he operates. People were begging him to run as an independent.
And the funny thing is, people talk about, Bernie Sanders winning the Hispanic vote or whatever, but I was in an area where they tried to do that, and what they actually did was to try to sell him as the AMLO of the United States, and he was not.
Yeah.
So it kind of created more confusion in people's minds. So I think what we have to say is look, this is not the AMLO of the United States. We really have to break out into a third party. That's it. I don't know who it's gonna be, but forget.
Right. Yeah, I remember when Hillary Clinton was running in 2016, they were trying to sell her to Hispanic voters as mi abuela. She was everyone's abuela, which was a joke. She was everyone's grandmother, which was kind of a joke.
Yeah, they did the same thing with Muslims. They were I'm Bernie, whatever, and it's no, it's not. And not to mention the fact that Bernie had so many worrying pro-war votes for Afghanistan and stuff like this. It just it doesn't work.
Yeah, Bernie's support was the use of Armed Forces Act. I forget what it's called, which enabled the president basically to bypass the War Powers Act, bypass Congress, and start a war anytime he wanted to. But Bernie supported that. He voted for the CARES Act, which is a $3 trillion transfer of wealth upward, and he openly admitted it. AOC probably voted for it. It was an unrecorded voice vote, but she probably voted for it. So many things are just horrible. Politics just absolutely horrible. Yeah, interesting what you're saying about AMLO. He's pushing back against the U.S. He's more friendly to Russia. He talked about Mexico. Mexico applied to join BRICS. And there's talk of the U.S. invading Mexico now. I think Lindsey Graham or a couple of people are talking about, well, maybe we have to invade Mexico. And they discovered lithium in Mexico. Oh, we're going to have to invade Mexico. Oh, God.
Well, that's the other thing about this push for Green New Deal with the Democrats is that they're invading a lot of countries in order to get lithium so that they can make their batteries and electric cars and stuff.
Right.
They're doing that, I think, Zambia, I don't remember which country in Africa, and Mexico and Bolivia. They want Mexico's lithium, they want Bolivia's lithium, and they want Argentina's lithium.
Right.
So, you know, a lot of the stuff for the Green New Deal agenda, it's like we really have to push back on it because what they want to do is they want to invade other countries for their resources and then they want their green contracts. So,
Right.
like, this is just not, it's not good. It's not, it's,
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, Elon Musk was even bragging about it. Like, we'll coup anywhere we want to. Called the lithium coup in Bolivia a couple of years ago. Yeah, it's pretty blatant. Yeah, I mean, climate change is real, absolutely, something we have to worry about. But I'm kind of very mistrustful about how they're using it. They're using the Green New Deal. It came from the Green Party originally, but AOC's version of it is very corporate, very insidious. They're using really justified concern over the environment to fund, maybe to support imperialist wars and plunder of many parts around the world. Is really like Greta. I used to like Greta Thunberg, but I think and she means well. She's a genuinely nice person, but I think she's being used by some forces.
I've been very weirded out by her very, like, recent interviews where she just doesn't respond and she just kind of laughs.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know what's going on with Greta Thunberg. I don't
I
trust
don't either.
her.
She was at the World Economic Forum, and I think a journalist from Rebel News interviewed her or something. She just didn't, for an environmental activist, she just didn't came off
It was very
really
weird. You
very
gotta
weird.
admit, her
Yeah, it was
responses
very.
were very weird.
Yeah, I mean, she's supposedly on the autism spectrum. I get that, but I don't know for an activist, she's just not. I don't know what's going on with her. Yeah, it's very. And why was she at the World Economic Forum to begin with? Not the place she should have been at,
I mean,
but
she wouldn't even answer a basic question, you know, because they asked her, like, if this forum is about climate change, why did you come on by plane? And she
yeah.
didn't answer.
Right, right. She didn't have an answer to that. Yeah, she's being used by people. I mean, yeah, it's this kind of an odd situation. Well, okay. Well, what else do you see for the direction ahead for U.S. politics? My hunch, a lot of progressive change will have to come from the global South. Unfortunately, I got Claire Daly, an MEP from Ireland, who's in the European Parliament. She's really cool, and a few politicians I like. She was saying that change will have to come. She's disappointed in Ireland. Like Ireland has a record of a history of independence, fighting against the British, but now Ireland is totally caved into NATO and imperialism in the U.S. and stuff. But she says like change will really have to come from the global South. Here, the U.S. the Democratic Party has it tied up. What you're doing is wonderful, and other activists are doing is really wonderful. But I don't know where change could come from. What would be your take on that?
I definitely think it has to, like, I mean, you can be on social media. I think it's very helpful for meeting people and meeting people that you might want to do things with. But ultimately, I think, and I don't, I think you can meet people on social media instead of meeting them through, because a lot of these local groups are co-opted anyway,
Yeah,
like local nonprofits and stuff like that. But, you know, I think, I really think people should go to their town halls and, like, protest their politicians. I think it's the easiest thing to do. I I've tried to do other kinds of things in the past, you know, stupid things. Like I helped with the Bernie Sanders campaign. That was a wash. I joined a group that was more like interstate organizing. That didn't work because then people were in different states, so they ended up arguing on social media. So I think like local is better, but it can't be so local that you're just like entertaining yourself with gardening. Even though I have nothing, there's nothing wrong with like doing gardening. You should definitely plant your
yeah,
own food if you can. But I think it should be locally confronting your politicians. That's what works. They have to be really embarrassed about what they're doing locally, and they have to like fear their voters more than they do now, because
right,
right now they really don't care and they think that they can manipulate everyone. And it's like kind of you're educating people. You're a social studies teacher. When you go to those town halls and stuff, like some people were just like, there were two ladies that met me outside and she's like, why did you do that? Like, why did you do it in Spanish? Why did you do, you know? And she
right,
just was curious about like what was going on. And she wasn't a young woman. It was like she was like in her 60s or something. So I think if you actually go to these events, you'll see a lot of older people, and those those older people that we dismiss as like establishment Democrats or whatever, those are our neighbors, like our friends, the people that we go to work with. So I always felt like the Bronx and Queens and stuff was really kind of a hub of populism, actually. Like I feel like it's a very populous city. It's just that the energy is kind of misdirected.
Right. That's
If that
interesting.
makes
Yeah.
sense.
It's interesting. Yeah. We have to redirect energy, wake people up, and then people are not like people like seem passive. A lot of people, most people don't vote, and they tune out politics because they think it doesn't concern them. But if you can connect with them, show them where it does concern with their life and how politicians are lying to them, you can get somewhere. Okay, well, thanks. I can't think of anything
All right.
else. Yeah, I thank you very much. I'm sorry about the connection issues. It was my
No,
fault.
I'm sorry. Well, thanks for having me on. It was a nice conversation, and maybe you can do the thing in Maine.
Okay, I'll
You
try.
know,
I'll get back.
I know
Thank.
this. I know this lady in Maine. She like I tried to get her to do it, but she's kind of still on the progressive train. Maybe it would be nice to. And
Yeah.
your channel would really grow if you do it at one of these events.
Okay. Yeah, we have Shelley Pingree is our congressperson. She's very pro NATO. All our reps are really pro NATO, pro Ukraine. Well, you could call them out. That's very good. Yeah,
All
cool.
right.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you. By the
All
way,
right. Bye.
where can people find your work? You're at Blue Moon Red Wine.
Yeah, I have a small channel called Blue Moon Red Wine,
Okay.
which I haven't really been working on it that much, to be honest.
Oh,
But
okay.
I do have a bunch of old videos that might be fun to watch, and I'm on
Okay.
Twitter as well.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much.
All right.
Have a
Bye.
great day. Bye bye.